going on.
So, Don, a couple other of these high-profile clients you've had or cases you've worked on. Lisa Marie Presley, what can you tell us about that?
Well, that had to do with her marriage to Michael Jackson. And the Michael Jackson chapter, I really got the smoking gun in there. And when they got married in Santo Domingo, and I had somebody on the ground following them. And it really wasn't a marriage. It was for convenience sake, because he'd just been accused of being a pedophile and all that sort of stuff. I had a very close personal contact with one of Michael Jackson's bodyguard, who had been with him for years, and who in my book, he does tell it all. But he said, in all his years, he never saw Lisa Marie at Neverland ever. He said, I wasn't here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but he said, I never saw her here, And so he didn't believe that there was anything there, nor did I. And, then he marries Debbie Rowe, and they had these kids. And somebody asked me, well, do you think it was artificial insemination? I said, no, I think a Viking came through town. I said, those kids don't look like Michael Jackson. And, but, it's a very complicated story. And like I say, it is in my book, but it was a sham, complete sham. And, it lasted long enough to get the publicity on it. And that was about it.
And who was your client in that case? That was the media as well?
Let's see. Yes, it was.
Now, what did you do with Donald and Marla Trump? Marla Maples and Donald Trump.
Well, Donald Trump was married to Ivana at the time,
Yeah.
and they were seeing each other. And one guy sold a picture of the National Enquirer that went back quite a ways, and it showed Maples with Donald Trump with a beard, a guy sitting in the middle between the two of them, and then I went to work, and she said she went on the Diane Sawyer show and said, I've never taken a dime from Donald Trump. I don't need Donald Trump. I make plenty of money on my own. And so I thought, okay, we'll take a look at it. And she made something like $1,500 a year. So somebody was paying for her apartment and the whole bit. I even tracked it down to a credit card that paid for a honey baked ham. And so that was, and even Trump said, they got the honey baked ham. They got me, so nobody did anything about it. But, that was for a media client too.
And now, what about Roseanne Barr and Tom Ronald? What did you have to do with them?
Well, they were a couple of, they were about as creepy as you get at that time, and probably still are. But they were the slobs, and they had this house in Benedict Canyon, and they were going to get married, and so they wanted me to cover the wedding. And I'm thinking, this is not exactly national security. Like, who cares if they get married? But it was a big story. And so the people next door had went on vacation, and they had a house sitter, and we gave her some money so we could move in there. And so they had tight security, and they had helicopters and all that stuff. And but what gets me is it was rumored they had rats in the house, and they'd have like pizza floating in the swimming pool and stuff like that. I mean, real pigs. And so when they got married, Tom Arnold said, we're your worst nightmare. We're rich, we're famous, and we're slobs. And they turned around and began eating the cake with their bare hands. It's not even spliced. And I'm thinking, they're doing that so they can beat the rats to it. But it was a thing where they had that Rosie had two girls, and she had them in I don't know whether you'd call it mental institution or what, but they went on a rampage one night, and Tom Arnold beat up Roseanne's ex-husband, and they just caught, and Tom Arnold allegedly hit one of the nurses, and that brought on a lawsuit, and it was just, in those days they were big news. Now it doesn't mean anything.
That's interesting. And are those two?
I thought they were made for each other, to be honest with you. I thought that was a match made in hell, and they belong with each other.
What do you make of all the stories with Roseanne Barr, where she claimed she was molested as a child, and what do you make of all that?
I wouldn't believe one thing she said.
Okay.
I mean, period. And as far as Tom Arnold is concerned, I never seen him count any higher than one, and that was his middle finger, and I think that was his IQ.
Well, today he's pretty good friends with Arnold Schwarzenegger. What do you think's behind that friendship?
Well, I'll tell you, the book that I just wrote, The Case of the Missing Screenwriter.
Yeah.
Gary DeVore was the screenwriter, and his first movie was Dr. War. Then he made Raw Deal with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then he made Running Scared. He was quite a popular screenwriter, and he was working on a screenplay about the invasion of Panama, and the CIA they rob a bank and they go for the drug money. They knew where the drug money was kept, which safety deposit boxes. So you had rogue elements there. You had money laundering between Noriega, the cartels, the CIA. Now that script doesn't exist anywhere. I've seen some treatments of it, but I understand he completely revised it. And the only place it existed was on an old Toshiba laptop that he had. And he went to Marcia Mason's house. This is June 27th, 1997. And he went to Marcia Mason's house to polish the script. He went over the weekend, and he was coming home Friday night because he had a group of people that were coming over to his house to watch the Tyson Holyfield ear-biting fight, and he was going to have a party that night, and so he left Friday night. This is a guy that loved to drive. I mean, he'd get in his car and drive hundreds of miles and think up scripts and what have you. And so anyway, he left Marcia Mason's, and he'd made phone calls to his wife. He left late in the afternoon, and he had made several phone calls to his wife because we got the cell records. But at 1:15 in the morning, he makes a call, and there's no record of it. That's the last time anybody heard of him. That would be early Saturday morning. I was called in the next day. I've been working this case for 18 years. It's the biggest mystery I've ever been involved in. You've got psychics, you've got the CIA, you've got mind control, you've got Hollywood, and I take the readers on this giant ride with me, and for 18 years, and he disappears. He disappears, and we look for him. And so a year later, they find his car and a body in the California Aqueduct around Palmdale, and so they pull it out. The hands are missing, and the script is missing, and so I figured the Highway Patrol said it's an accident, so I just more or less ride off into the sunset. I mean, hey, the Highway Patrol said it's an accident. It's an accident. And you can understand this. I got a hold of the Highway Patrol report is a 158-page, very detailed. A lot of were written very well, but so was Lord of the Rings, and nobody that. And when you read my book, you'll never believe this Highway Patrol report. And I've always had great respect for them, but this is the biggest setup. And the CIA is at the heart of this. Gary DeVore was an asset of the CIA. Gary DeVore is still alive after all these years. They put a body that matched his in that car. He had things like he was a Jewish cowboy, loved horses, loved rednecks, drank beer, watched the fights, stuff like that, and he had a Western saddle in this Explorer. He had 2 big pieces of luggage. Now, that's all missing out of there. This is all stuff he would have needed. The deeper you get into it, the more you can't believe it. And I've got 4 experts, including a highway patrolman, what they want you to believe is he got off the 14 freeway after crossing over the aqueduct in Palmdale, got off at the next off ramp, drove 3.5 miles with his lights out in the median without one car seeing him. And this is a major freeway, and this is also the way you go to Vegas, and that was the weekend of the Tyson Holyfield fight. And he hit a 17-foot wide opening that didn't have any guardrail fence or anything like that, vaulted 110 feet or so into the California aqueduct without touching any hard surface whatsoever. And there were parts, and I mean parts as small as a half an ounce, that flew completely across the California aqueduct and landed on the other side. After the California aqueduct had been searched many times, and there had been there was debris there, but as I say, some of it was as small as a half an ounce. They had some grill work and stuff like that, but it had been searched by everybody. There was a $100,000 reward, and nobody saw anything. And and I talked to the CIA guy, ex-CIA guy, and he said Gary and I went on missions together. He was an asset, and we paid him a lot of money for it. And he was the type of guy that would have jumped at the chance. He rode Backroads with Tommy Lee Jones and Sally Field. He was Tommy Lee Jones' best man at his wedding. There was a guy named Chase Brandon who was a big CIA operative. Tommy Lee Jones' his first cousin. They met each other in 1981, and they remained friends all during this time, and he would call on him for technical stuff. And I got to believe that he's involved in this somehow. Why he disappeared, it could have been something in the script that could have caused repercussions on national security. It could have had something to do with a cartel. And in order to keep his family safe, he disappeared. Either that or they murdered him. But mind control also comes in there. And I've got a ton of psychics, and every one of them from all over the world, and they didn't know each other. But when he turned up missing, every one of them said he's still alive. They even identify people who took him that are similar. And I'm not a big fan of that. I'll be honest with you. I believe in logic, and I believe in my instincts and what have you. And but it's a big mystery to me, because after they find the car, I start looking at this stuff and I'm going, God, they were right on. I mean, they were right on to the point where the car went in. Yeah. So, like I say, I take the readers with me on this, and it's a script that Gary would have worked on. It's a script he would have loved to work on, and maybe just maybe he did work on this script.
Why do you keep bringing up mind control? What evidence do you have of mind control? How does that fit in?
Mind control